Good morning, everyone. I'm Errol Barnett at the CBS Broadcast Center in New York, and we break into CBS Mornings Plus to bring you this breaking news out of Washington. You're looking at Trump Force One, as his campaign refers to it, carrying President-elect Donald Trump as he arrives in the nation's capital for the first time since being elected to a second non-consecutive term. This is Joint Base Andrews. It's just outside the Capitol, where the aircraft has just touched down moments ago. So we expected to see Trump momentarily. And today he has significant meetings lined up to lay the groundwork for his transition back to the presidency. He will meet with the GOP House Conference first, but before heading there, he'll head to the White House. He'll be joined by President Biden for the traditional transition meeting in the Oval Office, which will be a historic moment for us all to witness. You may remember that Trump broke with that tradition back in 2020 and did not invite President-elect Biden to the White House because Trump was still disputing the results of that election. And wow, how things have changed in just 4 years. Last week, most American voters decisively chose Donald Trump to return to the White House and bring his brand of leadership back to Washington. So it's a significant moment for the country and for voters of Trump who wanted to see his style of leadership again leading the nation. CBS political reporter Libby Cathey, who has been following the Trump campaign during the hard-fought election cycle and now is focusing on the transition, joins us from our Washington bureau with more on this. Libby, what can we expect to see from the president-elect today?
Yeah, Errol, an historic day in Washington as former president, now president-elect Donald Trump returns for the first time since being elected to a second term. And now hear him landing at Joint Base Andrews. This is his first time at JBA since leaving office in January of 2021. That is a military facility in Maryland that presidents typically fly in and out of. So Trump going to deplane there momentarily as we're watching that, and has a very big day in Washington. Two big meetings on the agenda. First, meeting with Republican lawmakers on Capitol Hill, as you mentioned. And we should note that this meeting, making his presence known before lawmakers today, is significant because they are holding leadership elections, both in the House and the Senate. In the Senate, first time they're selecting a new leader in 18 years. Now, Trump has not endorsed in those races, but his presence on Capitol Hill is saying, hey, put my agenda, the America First agenda, as he calls it, first. And then after meeting with Republican lawmakers, he will go to the White House, meeting with President Joe Biden at the invitation of Biden. This is hugely significant as it symbolizes the peaceful transfer of power, hallmark to American democracy. But this invitation was not extended by Trump to Biden when Biden won the presidency just 4 years ago. As you mentioned, Trump really refusing that peaceful transfer of power. But today, the tradition continuing. Biden inviting Trump last week, just a few days after, or really not too long after, it was clear that Trump was going to clinch the presidency. So they'll have that meeting in the Oval Office. I'm sure Biden will take the chance to talk about Ukraine and some other top priorities of his that he is concerned that Trump will abandon when he takes office here shortly. But Errol, huge day for the former president, now president-elect, returning to D.C. And this is not the first time. He did do some campaigning here, but for the first time since he has been given this mandate for a second term, Errol.
That's right. We stand by to watch the door there of Trump Force One, as his campaign calls it, to open and show the president-elect. We're listening to Libby Cathey from our D.C. bureau run through what we can expect on what's a significant day. And there's one other character, Libby, that is a part of today's presentation I want us all to keep an eye out for, and that's billionaire Elon Musk. We understand that Elon Musk will join the president-elect at today's GOP House Conference. We have information that Elon Musk is, in fact, on board this aircraft with the president-elect as he makes this first impression in Washington as the newly minted president-elect. And we have heard also that Trump intends to put Musk, along with businessman Vivek Ramaswamy, as the leaders of a new agency known as the Department of Government Efficiency. It may be a non-government agency that, in Trump's words, will, quote, pave the way for his administration to dismantle government bureaucracy, slash excess regulations, cut wasteful expenditures, and restructure federal agencies, essential to the Save America movement. We're just watching the doors open here now. It will be interesting to see how close Musk might be to Trump. Let's just stand by for a moment as we await for them to come to the door. But Libby, how significant was Musk in getting Trump elected?
Absolutely, Errol. Trump bringing Elon Musk with him to Washington in itself today is significant. Now, Elon Musk, the richest man in the world, recently bought Twitter, renamed it X. And some say that platform alone had a big influence in the presidential election, as you saw Musk kind of with the algorithm put forth.
And Libby, we just want to acknowledge that we see the president-elect departing his plane, walking down the stairs as he returns to Washington, pushed by most American voters, and after winning every single swing state with a type of electoral mandate to bring his style of business and political leadership back to the nation's capital. We see him now getting in his vehicle. It does not appear that he'll be taking any questions or addressing the press at this time. We did not see Elon Musk. We understand former First Lady Melania Trump is not with the president-elect on this trip. But continue, Libby, to explain how Elon Musk helped make this moment happen.
Yeah, Elon Musk has had Trump's ear for a while now, and spending a lot of time with him this last week, this first week since Trump was elected. And as he fires off these cabinet picks, Elon Musk has appeared to have Trump's ear for all of it, and even traveling with him today to Washington for these hugely important meetings. Now, we've learned that Elon Musk will be with President-elect Trump when he meets with Republican lawmakers. It's not clear that he will be at that Biden meeting. Biden did not invite Elon Musk to the White House. He invited President-elect Trump. But Elon Musk's influence largely felt this week traveling with Trump when, as you mentioned, First Lady Melania Trump, former First Lady, incoming First Lady, is not with Trump today. But Elon Musk is. He has had quite the influence, and Trump yesterday appointing him to this new Department of Government Efficiency. This is something that Trump ran on and Elon ran on, saying that they would cut the waste out of government. Trump announcing that Elon and Vivek Ramaswamy would lead this department. A lot of questions about what exactly they will do, how it will work, but they say it's meant to cut government spending. And it's significant that Elon Musk, the world's richest man who has a lot of stakes in what the government does, is traveling with Trump today to Washington. There you see again Trump just deplaned at Joint Base Andrews, his first time at JBA since leaving the office of the presidency in January of 2021. Hugely important day in Washington. And while Trump did not extend that invitation to Biden back in 2020 after Biden was elected president, Biden extending that invitation to Trump to symbolically carry on that peaceful transfer of power, which this United States is known for, Errol.
Libby Cathey giving us her insight after following the Trump campaign through so many states and now covering the transition as Donald Trump returns to Washington, elevated by a majority of American voters and after winning all swing states after a hard-fought presidential election. We will continue to bring you live coverage as the president-elect meets the sitting president, Biden, in the Oval Office, and as he crisscrosses Washington to shore up his new transition as he gets ready for his presidency. Stay with CBS News 24/7 throughout the day for all of the latest developments. We'll head to a break, and in a moment, you'll see a continuing version of CBS Mornings Plus.